Council, regular session, Tuesday, July 7th, 2015 at 7 o'clock. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pena.
Here.
Mr. Hoffman.
Here.
Mr. Fields.
Here.
Mr. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Paul.
Here.
Mrs. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Thackeray.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good to see everybody here tonight on a rainy evening. First thing on our agenda tonight is approval of Urbana City Council regular session minutes of June 16th, 2015. Council, need to speak to that? Need a motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Any corrections or additions to that set of minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting Urbana City Council regular session minutes of June 16th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Communications, Madam Clerk.
Number 1, Planning Commission meeting minutes of April 27th, 2015 and May 18th, 2015. Email June 24th, 2015.
Okay, Council, to speak to this, we need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or concerns on those two sets of minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting those Planning Commission minutes of April 27th and May 18th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Move right into administrative reports from the Board of Control.
Number 1, the Board of Control recommends that the Director of Administration amend the existing contract with DLZ Ohio, Inc. to add new services in the amount of $10,500 for title and appraisal work related to the SRTS Phase 2 PID number 96388. DLZ was selected by the city through a qualification-based selection process to complete right-of-way plans for this project and 2 other ODOT-funded projects. In 2015, the available budget for SRTS Phase 2 will be exceeded. The additional funding required will utilize funds from the Capital Improvement Fund. Vote 3-0.
Okay, Council, to speak to this, we need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Doug?
Hopefully this is one of the last items where we're adding new services for DLZ. They have been working with us on several projects over the last couple of years. This is the third one. This is the Safe Routes to School project, which is basically to put sidewalks on the south side of Boyce Street between East Lawn and Jefferson, and then also sidewalks on, I believe, the east side of Madison, if I remember correctly. So being that this is federal money, the good news is, well, federal money is coming to do the construction at 100%. So, well, yeah, 100% from ODOT, part of it federal. So we have just some costs related to plan work and right-of-way acquisition. So actually there's one more item that's going to come back to council once we have authorization from ODOT to move forward with the next step. But to get started on this process, which is title and appraisal work, that's the fee at this time. So you will see one more item here in another month or two, and then we should be all done with this part of the work, so for all these projects.
Mr. Hoffman, any questions?
So for this 10-5, we're getting, excuse me, sidewalks from Boyce to Jefferson. What was the other sidewalks?
It's on Madison from Boyce to the back of East Elementary. And this project was put together before the levy passed for the new buildings. And we checked with ODOT and they asked us to leave our project scope the way it was originally submitted. So we did reach out and try to amend or change, and we basically had to keep our scope the way it was. So,
okay. Well, at the very least, though, the sidewalks from Boyce to Jefferson are far exceed $10,500, so we're still getting a pretty good return on our investment.
We had some plan work that DLZ did for us already. We've paid for, and this is just another part of getting to the point to where we can go to construction. So,
okay, thank you,
Mr. Pena.
No, I think it's going to be pretty nice to have those sidewalks there. Those kids that, for right now, will be walking safely down there, and there's a lot of them that go that direction. So,
Mr. Thackeray.
I have no questions.
Mrs. Smith?
None.
Mr. Paul?
This is our 10-5, Doug, right?
Yeah, it's all local.
Okay, so we're not going to see any of this back
No.
as part of ODOT
This
funding
is
or anything?
essentially an investment we make in the project.
Okay. That makes sense to me, so I don't have any other questions at this time.
Mr. Evans?
Nothing.
Mr. Fields?
Is that from Dorothy Moore down?
No, just Jefferson to East Lawn
Okay,
on the south side.
okay. Thank you.
There are 7 parcels that I believe we need to acquire right-of-way, so this is part of that process to do it properly per the federal requirements.
Mr. President, can I ask a question? Can I?
Sure.
Okay, just having to think. So what if we just decide, you know what, we know what's coming in the future, why would we go ahead and do this? What if council says tonight, you know what, we don't want to spend the 10-5 on this? What happens then?
Then we give our project back to ODOT and the money goes back and goes out to somebody else.
Okay. Do we need the sidewalks there?
I think it could be argued we need them on Boyce. As I said, we went to ODOT to see if we could take the scope out for Madison, and they asked us to leave it as it was. So.
Okay. Okay, I was just curious, thank you.
Yep.
They're on the north side though, right?
South side.
No, we have sidewalks on the north side.
Partially.
When do they plan on doing this?
The construction's next year. This is just, when you do federal projects, you have all these different milestones you have to hit. So this is part of those milestones of having the property that we need to do the project. So.
I'm all in favor for sidewalks all over the city, but this seems like not a great idea from the state. Let's go that way. Wouldn't it be better to go on out?
Yeah, I mean, again, we can give the money back, but at this point, I think we've already invested in it, so.
Right, I'm just asking.
Yeah, we tried to change the scope, so.
Okay, council, any other, Mr. Thackeray?
Yeah,
Thank you.
what's the total value?
I can't remember the exact grant amount for the construction. I want to say it's close to 200,000 if I remember right.
So 10 out of 200,000 is a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and like I said, we're going to have another item that's going to come back that's going to add to this, and we've got some we've already invested. But on the construction site, we get 80% federal and 20% from the state, so we pay nothing out on the construction.
So it'd be nice to get some of our tax money back. Thanks. That's all.
Any other questions, council? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the Board of Control's recommendation or authorizing the Director of Administration to amend the existing contract with DLZ Ohio Inc. to add new services in the amount of $10,500, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Let the record show Mr. Paul voted no on that. But it does pass 6-1. Next one, please.
The Board of Control recommends approval of change orders number 1 through number 9 to Kinnison Excavating Incorporated for the Phase 1 water replacement Wooddale Amherst OPWC project number CK23R in the amount of $29,465.21 for additional costs related to the project. Change orders number 1 through 7 have already been performed by the contractor in order to allow for project progress. Change order number 8 is related to additional street resurfacing on the portion of Amherst Drive not directly impacted by the project. Change order number 9 will adjust the manhole on Amherst that is owned by CT Communications. Change orders number 1 through 7 will be charged to the OPWC project loan for $11,565 and the water fund $9,120.21. Change orders number 8 through 9 will be charged to capital improvement street paving $8,780, with CT Communications reimbursing the city for the manhole adjustment on Amherst Drive for $900. See attached. Vote 3-0.
Okay, council, to speak to this, we need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Doug, you want to explain this one?
Okay, as you know, we've been well into the project on Wooddale and Amherst, replacing water lines. In fact, they're nearing completion. They're doing restoration work at this time. That being said, we incurred some costs that we didn't plan on throughout the project. So 1 through 7, one of them was a 0 change order, but there's 6 that have costs associated with them. One of the issues we had, if you remember, there's a CT Communications utility trench, if you will, that follows Amherst Drive, and part of the extra cost we experienced was working in close proximity to that, which we knew we'd be dealing with no matter what, but because you have minimum distance for installing your utilities from each other, like your sewer and water have to be so far apart. So the only way to make it work was to run right beside the CT trench with the water main, and we experienced some issues related to that. Couple unknowns. We had found out there was a water service installed at the lot that we own at the corner of Amherst and Finch that we had no idea was there, and they found. There's a cost to repair that and put it back together. So it's kind of the miscellaneous things we experienced there in those what was it, 1 through 7. Change order 8 basically is for us to do additional resurfacing on Amherst and pick up the small portion of Amherst that really wasn't part of the water project. I think it's 200 and some feet, and it goes from Wooddale to Bon Air Drive, that small section there. So that's the 8,780, and then there's a manhole that CT Communications is going to pay us to take care of for them on Amherst.
Okay, Mr. Pena, questions?
No, you're going to run into these things, and we've discussed that before, so no questions.
Mr. Thackeray?
I don't have any questions at this point.
Mrs. Smith?
No.
Mr. Paul?
What was the initial total amount for this
We
project?
had a loan for 570. Our contract was like 558 something.
Okay.
So we're going to use up the loan dollars we have available, and then that's why there's a portion that's going to come out of our capital, water capital, and then of course some of it comes out of our street budget
Right.
as well.
Well, it kind of makes sense to me to finish up the paving. If you just have that small of an area, go ahead and finish it up. 30 grand out of a project that big, in my mind, really isn't all that much to be maybe miscalculated, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. So I don't have any issues with that. Thanks.
Mr. Evans?
No questions.
Mr. Fields?
No question.
$7,800 to blacktop that little bit extra?
Yep. Asphalt's expensive.
I suppose you guys want to do that, but you just spent $10,000 on something else. But oh, Mr. Hoffman, I was going around.
Ask questions.
I was going around.
That's all right, I don't have any, Doug.
Okay. Any further questions, council? All those in favor of accepting the Board of Control's recommendation to approve change orders 1 through 9 to Kinnison Excavating in the amount of $29,465.21 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Next one, please.
The Board of Control recommends council authorize a purchase order to Corporate Equipment Company in the amount of $16,000 for the purchase of 2 pumps to replace existing pumps located on West Light Street. This expenditure will be charged to the Capital Improvement Fund and is not in the 2015 budget. See attached. Vote 3-0.
Okay, council, to speak in this, we need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Colin's going to explain this one.
Okay. There's a stormwater pump station on the east side of the Light Street Bridge because it's low enough there that it can't be gravity, so we got to lift it and send it to the nearest gravity line to get the water out from underneath the bridge. We had catastrophic failure of both pumps earlier this summer. Probably due to age. The pump's tag said 1961. So we felt it was, we looked at options of replacing the parts and such, and the cost was so close together, we figured we should go with new. There was some mismatch in the motor sizes, which affected the other parts of the pump, and we wanted them to match. And we also wanted to know what was in there and when it was put in. That way, in the future, we know exactly what we have there. Because right now, have they been rebuilt? We don't know. Are they original? We don't know. They can't find any records on them. So we just thought that we should just get new pumps and hopefully get another 50 years out of them, if it takes that long. See if I can figure it out.
Questions, Mr. Thackeray?
I think we've got our use out of the pumps we have. It's about time to get new ones, I guess.
Mrs. Smith?
No, sounds good to me.
Mr. Paul?
That's probably been about time since they're older than I am.
What?
It's feeling old, yeah. We've got to have them. We don't have a choice, so no issues. This makes sense.
Mr. Evans?
I have no questions.
Mr. Fields?
They're going to be, the pumps are going to be alike though, right?
Correct.
So you're
They're
getting-
actually very little change between even the old ones as far as design. They're going to fit right in the footprint that we have there, and both pumps will be exactly the same. So the parts would be interchangeable if we need them. And yeah, they'll be twins.
Now, did I read somewhere where we'll be able to utilize just one pump and leave one pump?
You can the system is set up down there to alternate pumps, or have a lag pump, or have one go off every time the same. And I think it's also set up to on a float system where if you get a rush of water, both pumps will kick in to help evacuate it to keep the road from flooding.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Hoffman?
Gene asked a lot of questions I had. I'm glad to see you made them both the same so you can have spare parts, pump seals, whatever. You don't need two of each. Also, I do appreciate you looking at a rebuild, even though they were kind of old for a pump, but I saw the price was only a couple $1,000s off.
The one thing that we had to look at was there's some parts to the main casing that by sight looked okay, but we couldn't guarantee that they were good. So you invest that, and then you end up throwing bearings and have to get more bearings and then replace those parts. And by the time you did that, you'd almost be at the cost of a new one. So we thought we'd start off fresh. We'd have all our paperwork there. I got a PO for electrician to make sure everything's hooked properly, and then we'll have our maintenance schedule, and we'll be able to set these and pull them once a year to maintenance and make sure everything's okay.
Okay. But all the pump stands and valving and all that's all going to remain.
It'll actually drop right back into place where the old ones were, and it's just a matter of hooking up a Fernco and it'll be there.
Okay. Good deal.
Mr. Pena?
No questions. I think you guys done your homework well enough. Thank you.
Last shot, council. Okay, all those in favor of accepting the Board of Control's recommendation to authorize a purchase order to Corporate Equipment Company in the amount of $16,000 for 2 pumps, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And the next one, please.
Number 4, the Board of Control recommends council authorize a purchase order to Software Solutions in the amount of $13,765.85 for the annual software license and maintenance support for the financial systems that process the city's general ledger, accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll, income tax, and utility billing systems. Last year, the charge for the software license and maintenance support was $13,121.85, resulting in a 5% increase in 2015. This expense will be charged equally to the 3 finance departments and is in the 2015 budget. Vote 3-0.
Okay, council, to speak to this, we need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Hopefully this is pretty self-explanatory. It's one of the annual process we go through to get the licenses and everything so we can conduct business through the finance office.
Mrs. Smith, any questions?
No.
Mr. Paul?
Last year, we didn't have an increase in this last year, as I recall, did we? the price of the software, I don't think?
Last year it was nominal.
Okay, so how often is Software Solutions having to do updates and come in and tweak anything?
They do them throughout the year based on, if there's a need or demand.
Okay.
So this is all part of the process for them to keep their systems current for our use.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, we gotta have it, so that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Evans?
I have no questions.
Mr. Fields?
I have none.
Mr. Hoffman?
No questions.
Mr. Pena?
No, sir.
Mr. Thackeray?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. No further questions? All those in favor of accepting the Board of Control's recommendation to authorize the purchase order to Software Solutions, the amount of $13,765.85, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously passes. Do they give you a breakdown of license and maintenance? Does it make a difference?
They may have, I don't have it.
Okay. That was our last Board of Control request. We're at citizens' comments. Any citizen like to come forward and ask council any questions or administration? 3 minutes of fame and glory. If not, we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. For a third reading.
Resolution number 2454-15, a resolution to authorize preliminary approval between the City of Urbana, Ohio and the Ohio Department of Transportation for pavement planning and resurfacing of State Route 54, project number CHP SR 5410.34 from the Urbana South Corporation Limit, Powell Avenue, straight line mile 10.34, to United States Route 36, straight line mile 11.22, plus or minus within the City of Urbana, Champaign County, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, council, this is a third reading. We need a motion to that effect. Thank you, Mr. Thackeray.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Doug, finally?
Yep, this is just legislation that says the city's going to participate in a resurfacing project of 54 from Scioto Street to the Powell Avenue, basically. And it would be in the summer of 2018. Our local cost right now is anticipated to be $80,250. But if oil starts going back up, that number will go up. So anyway, that's what we're looking at. So this just, you will see legislation in a few years to actually move forward with the project. This is just saying preliminarily we'll participate.
Questions, Mr. Paul?
None.
Mr. Evans?
None.
Mr. Fields?
When they do that, are we thinking about widening that turn there off Powell Avenue onto off Main onto Powell? Have we thought about that?
Well, that'd be, you're talking at 68 in Powell.
Yeah.
No, because this would be only on 54.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
We still have that project on our radar in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Hoffman?
No.
Mr. Pena?
No questions.
Mr. Thackeray?
No.
Mrs. Smith?
No.
Okay, this is a third reading. Need a roll call and a passage, please.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Thackeray?
Yes.
Mr. Pena?
Yes.
Resolution 2454-15 passes unanimously and goes into effect immediately and will happen in 3 years. Next one, please.
Ordinance number 4385-15, an ordinance to amend Chapter 141 of the Urbana, Ohio Codified Ordinance concerning ambulance service rates and charges.
Okay, council, this is a third reading. We need a motion to that effect, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
The chief's not here tonight, but I think we talked about this a couple times in work sessions and a couple readings. So the numbers are pretty straightforward. The opportunity was trying to get ourselves back into the sweet spot, if you will, of the surrounding area. We haven't updated our billing for the last 2 or 3 years. It's just time to revisit it and realign it.
Questions, Mr. Paul?
No.
Mr. Evans?
None.
Mr. Fields?
None.
Mr. Hoffman?
No, sir.
Mr. Pena?
No, sir.
Mr. Thackeray?
None.
Mrs. Smith?
No.
Okay, hearing none, roll call on the passage, please.
Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Thackeray?
Yes.
Mr. Pena?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance number 4385-15 passes unanimously. And the next one, please.
Ordinance number 4429-15, an ordinance adopting the tax budget of the city of Urbana, Ohio for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2016, submitting the same to the county auditor.
Okay, council, this is also a third reading. We need a motion to that effect, please.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Thacker and Mr. Paul.
And this is one we've talked about work sessions, and I think Chris has done a good job of laying this out. We had the public hearing at the beginning of the last meeting. Bottom line is, again, we're relatively flat. We're looking at a $6.292 million revenue coming in, down about 0.3% from this year's estimate for 2015. So we're estimating things to be relatively flat. Comparing that to the 2013 actual, which is 6.357, again, over that period of time, we're down about a little over 1%. So if everyone recalls what's been going on over the last few years with the reduction in the local government fund, and while our revenues may be increasing in the tax collection, it's just being offset by the losses we're not getting from the state. So we're treading water. We're at a point, basically, the preliminary budget, just to get through this process. We're about a $5,000 surplus based on historic spend and on this base revenue. So we don't anticipate a lot of new activities next year. We're going to try to keep doing the best we can with what we have.
Okay, Mr. Evans, questions?
No.
Mr. Fields?
None.
Mr. Hoffman? Mr. Pena?
No, sir.
Mr. Thackeray?
None.
Mrs. Smith?
No.
And finally, Mr. Paul.
Nope, it is what it is.
Okay, hearing no questions, roll call on passage, please.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Thackeray?
Yes.
Mr. Pena?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Ordinance 4429-15 passes unanimously. That's the last third reading, and we have no second readings. First readings, please.
Resolution number 2456-15, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to accept the $5,000 grant from the DP&L Foundation and the Dayton Power and Light Company on behalf of the City of Urbana, Champaign County, Ohio. Suspension of the rules requested.
Okay, council, someone wants to give us money. They're asking for suspension of the rules, so.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend the three reading rule on resolution number 2456-15.
And I'll second.
Roll call on the suspension, please.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Thackeray?
Yes.
Mr. Pena?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Okay.
I can fill you in. Talked with Ben Volrath from DP&L. I think everyone knows Ben coming to the meeting probably 2 months ago, and he was asking about some projects that we could look at in the community that maybe they could help fund out of their foundation. We've renewed the park festivals coming up. We've got some other events coming up over the next couple of months. And so Chris Stokes had a couple of estimates in the background that had never been able to be funded for some improvements, some of the ballpark scoreboards, some lighting, and the upgrades around the stage area. So last Thursday afternoon, we knew it was coming. We just didn't, we were planning on it coming. I hope I didn't have to cancel this resolution. Came in Thursday afternoon, we got the letter and the check in the mail. So we'd like to, again, suspend the rules so we can accept the money right away, get it in the coffers. The money will be directed to the Park and Recreation Trust Fund. So that fund we created last year that will allow us to make capital improvements within the park system based on the recommendations coming out of the park board. So that this was earmarked for the stage, so that's where it'll be, the money will have to be spent for that purpose when it's brought out to make the repairs. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think, again, yesterday I sent everybody a copy of the letter we got, so you can have it in front of you. And pretty self-explanatory. They do a lot of good philanthropic efforts around the community, around the Miami Valley. This is just one of their ways of trying to give back to the community.
Mr. Evans, questions?
No.
Mr. Fields?
None.
Mr. Hoffman?
Thanks to them.
Mr. Pena?
No, but thank you also.
Mr. Thackeray?
Thank you, DPNO. No questions.
Mrs. Smith?
No.
Mr. Paul?
None.
Okay.
So, Mr. President, I make a motion that we place resolution number 2456-15 on the business floor for eventual passage.
And I'll second.
No further questions? Roll call on the passage, please.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Thackeray?
Yes.
Mr. Pena?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Fields?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Okay, resolution 2456-15 passes unanimously. I guess we can cash a check.
I'll turn that into finance.
And the last one, please.
Ordinance number 4443-15, an ordinance accepting the annexation of a tract of 2.052 acres, more or less, to the city of Urbana, Ohio.
This is the first reading, Doug.
Sure. This is the Dollar Tree annexation. If you remember, they filed back in March to be annexed into the city since we provided water and sewer to the property. And they filed for expedited foreclosure, but the process will not be completed till September. We have to follow state statute, which sets all the days that have to pass in between the steps of the process. So that being said, they filed back in March. Council passed legislation to provide services. The commissioners approved the annexation. Then they sent a file saying they had approved it. It had to sit for 60 days before we could introduce it. And now we introduce it, have 3 readings, and then 30 days after the 3rd reading, it's effective, which is around September 7th. So much for expedited.
That is expedited.
But that wasn't an expedited foreclosure.
No, expedited annexation.
You said.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Correct the record there, would you?
Mr. Fields, question. Mr. Hoffman.
No, I will say that project is coming along well. It looks nice.
It's supposed to open in July sometime.
Mr. Pena.
No questions.
Mr. Thackeray.
No questions.
Mrs. Smith.
No.
Mr. Paul.
No, sir.
Mr. Evans.
None.
Declare ordinance number 4443-15 to have had a first reading. And we're done with ordinances and resolutions. We'll move into miscellaneous business. You ready? This council looks like they've got a lot. Mr. Fields.
Nothing.
Start off with that. Mr. Evans.
Mr. President, fellow councilmen, Mayor Bean, and administration, it is a citizen's duty to hold elected officials accountable for what they do. And I have no problem with that. I take ownership of all I say and do as a councilman. In our school board, they are also elected officials, and they should be held accountable for what they say and do. I recommend to the school board that you make an appointment with Mr. Bruger and Mr. Bean, or Mayor Bean, and you get all the facts surrounding this, call it what you want, a rift between the school system and the city over this building of this new building. I invite any board member to come to this meeting and sit down with the administration and get the facts, the true facts, before you go around town shooting off your mouth. Now, I'm trying to be civilized about this, but I'm getting tired of hearing out in the community how certain school board members are out there throwing the city, the council, the administration under the bus over this mismanagement issue by our school superintendent. So as a citizen, Mr. Hess, I want to go on record that I want to hold the school board accountable for what you say and what you do, and that you should get the facts from the administration so you'll know where we're coming from. That's all I got to say.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, just briefly, Colin, kind of, while you were giving your description of the pumps and things and mentioned it was from 1961, and it got me thinking, a lot of times when we hear these requests for equipment and, you know, we hear about old pipes and pumps and all that kind of thing, how are we keeping track of the new things going in that we're funding so that we know, okay, that pump's from 1936, you know, or whatever the situation is, so that are we looking at tracking these so we can create some kind of a maintenance schedule around that, or how are we doing that?
Well, like our lighting system, traffic lights, every lighting box has a set of plans in it that tells you what's in that box, dates, settings, where they're at. So I plan on doing the same thing down in that building, where we'll have a packet of some kind in the building that has the specs of the pumps. Then we can keep a log down there on when we pull them. You know, basically they're going to get greased after a rain. You're not going to grease them daily because they're not going to run daily. But that way everything's down there, so that when somebody's there in the middle of the night because there's a problem, or somebody's on vacation and not able to get a hold of them, they can look at all that information and know exactly who to call, where we got them from, who's going to have parts, who to ask for technical questions, because they'll know all about the pumps when you call the company that you buy them from. So I plan to have all that down there in the building, just like we do our traffic lights.
Do you have a centralized location? You know, you have pumps all over the city, right? So
street department just has one. Those are the only set of pumps that the street department has.
Okay.
The rest of it's going to fall under either water or sewer.
Okay.
And then they're going to have their stuff located probably either at their offices, or I don't know how they run their lift stations.
Right. And I'll talk to those guys
about that.
about
The street department, that's the only one that we have.
Okay.
We'll just.
So what about other? So let's just talk street department then, just briefly then. So what about other equipment? Here's kind of what I'm thinking is, okay, we swap out equipment, we buy trucks or we buy pumps or whatever it happens to be. Do you have a centralized place that you can look at something that says, oh, okay, we did this 3 years ago, we need to take a look at this? And do you have a centralized location where you have that information?
We have the maintenance records.
Okay.
For our trucks.
Okay.
In our equipment, so that when we change the oil or whatever we may do to it, we write it down on this date. So and so and so and so changed oil, greased it, or whatever.
So you're building the maintenance around that.
Correct.
Do you know if the other divisions are doing the same thing?
I know Chad, especially with his upgrade now, he was early on looking at a computerized maintenance management system.
Okay.
And so what they're working on now is loading all that information in for PMs and those types of things, so they can track, not necessarily, you know, we grease it every 3 months. We grease it after so many cycles or so many hours. So you're actually putting your PM's time where it's needed, not just based on calendar. Why grease it if it ran twice, if you should grease it after 2,000 cycles or whatever.
Right.
So those are the things that he's working on right now in his system. I know Bob has, I don't think he has it computerized, but he has a very detailed log that's required to maintain in order to keep the licensure up and all the inspections to meet all the EPA standards and that type of thing.
Would we have any resources available to automate that or centralize in a database or something?
I can't say that we have resources available to do it as a group. We have, you know, like Tyler and Doug, they track all the engineering projects. So those are all pretty well documented. All the activities that's going on through the zoning, whenever there's a planning commission approval, those types of things are all documented. There's logs, there's journals, and there's files that give you the history of that particular case, if you will.
Okay.
So, and I know the facilities, Dan's been working on that the last couple of years, building a file for this building, so he has all the HVAC units in a binder. You know, we don't have a computerized system. He does have spreadsheets, we do have tracking mechanisms, but it's not something that's going to automatically populate when something happens.
Right, gotcha.
So it's going to require somebody to to look at something periodically to make sure we're still on track.
Okay, but as we talked about even just a couple of years ago, as I recall, your intention was, let's get on a maintenance plan.
Yeah.
You know, let's upkeep as opposed
And
to.
we do have it's kind of the bare bones, the program's called Facility View. Kind of an odd name, but it's a system that people can put in work orders, track when work gets done, and what was done, what was required, what didn't need to be done at a later date, parts need to be ordered. So there's attachments you can put to that system. So we're kind of picking at it. We just don't have the capital funding or all to set up something citywide.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, Colin. One thing I wanted to say was I just wanted to thank all the volunteers that we had at the Home and Garden Tour last week, and I think we, or I shouldn't say we, but they represented the city very well. Heard just terrific comments from folks that came in from out of town. They saw some very nice properties and gardens. They just had fantastic things to say about the town, so I think we should all be proud of where we are right now and what we represent. So that's all I had for this evening.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
In reference to your question about the equipment maintenance, the city has an ungodly amount of equipment. I've seen lists on the fire department. At one time we had lists on what the street department has. Every department has a lot of, I don't know if since you guys buy it, would you like to know what there is? I mean, I don't know if that's a possibility that you have a little checklist that you say we've got 7 dump trucks and the backhoe and the loader and the da-da-da-da-da. I mean, you wouldn't want down the shovels and hose, but anything over, say, $500, $1,000, just so you know what is being taken care of, because their maintenance costs are, you know.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going. If you're maintaining things and you have a record and you know about when things are getting ready to be looked at, then you can be ahead of it, as opposed to it's a drastic issue, the pipe burst or something like that.
So you would know what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
If you're interested, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there.
I just want to make sure they know.
Right.
I'm less concerned.
The capital plan too, there's always like a 4-year out, trying to identify things early that we know are, starting to have the tongue hang out. You know you've got that done. Because these are the questions we're going to get at.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Just throw it out.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Smith.
This is for Mr. Crable. Maybe you can explain to some of the citizens out there that when they call in and complain about a vehicle sitting in a driveway and the tags are like 5 years old and it's not running, what can happen, or if anything can happen?
Yeah, the code says if it's inoperable and or unlicensed. So if the tags are expired, that's one thing that can be cited, and we have a way of checking that through the police department. If it's inoperable, sometimes it's very obviously inoperable, other times it's not so obvious. But what we'll try to do is document that in some way that it's inoperable if we're calling it inoperable. So up on blocks or, grass growing around it that hasn't been mowed, whatever it may be. So, yeah, so that's...
So eventually they will have to update the tags or actually remove the vehicle then from the property?
Right, so to comply, if it's been deemed inoperable, they have to restore it to be operable. If it's unlicensed or the license is expired, they have to bring it up to current licensing with the Department of, the state, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's it for now.
Do you remember the tree that was growing up between the bumper and the body of the motorhome? About a 4-inch tree? They said it was...
What's a planer box now?
That's all I have, though.
Mr. Thacker.
I just wanted to address the dumpster situation again. People putting trash into dumpsters that they don't either rent or own. I did put some locks on mine, so my issues have stopped, but about a block up the street, I go down the alley and there's cars dumping trash bags into another dumpster that I know that they don't own. So I just wanted to remind the citizens that that is illegal, that somebody is paying for that dumpster, and when it's overflowed, they pay a penalty to Waste Management or whoever because it was over the top. It is illegal. I've got some license numbers and some dates and times. I'm going to be turning those in, so people are going to be finding out that they've been caught. I just want to throw that out. Be careful. Also, the trash receptacles downtown are just for the walking public. That isn't, you don't pull your car up there and fill one of those up because you don't want to spend money to have your trash picked up. So, just just a reminder.
Thank you.
That's it.
Mr. Pena.
I just want to say a couple things. One, I had family in from out of town from Florida. They haven't been back in Urbana almost 15 years. A lot of things going on in Urbana, and they was just elated by how everything was taken care of, how clean it was, and just how nice the people were. That's makes you feel good as a citizen and see what's going on around here. And again, they haven't been here for almost 20 years, and it's like, man, this place is, really is alive. So that makes you really feel good. So just want to say thank you to everybody with all the help and all the things going on. And again, this weekend is going to be busy again. So looking forward to that also. That's all I got.
Mr. Hoffman.
Question, I'm not sure who it would be directed towards, but I've had some interest in people wanting to do some community service, and I know the city, you guys do well with the resources you have, but I'm assuming there are small projects out there that you'd be more than happy to have some excited and energetic citizens to help out. The problem is people want to help, but they really don't know who to ask, and I'm trying to get a list together of some things. Carrie, Doug, Bill, whomever may have some items. Colin may have some things that he could have done in his department, but I don't know if it'd be possible if we could get a list. I don't need it tomorrow. I know you guys are busy, but if we could get a list together of a handful of kind of citizen type items that don't cause a real huge liability issue with the city, I'd like to have that, and I'll facilitate that with some other members of council. We've talked about doing some things, so there's an interest.
Yeah, I'll get that for you. I can work on it.
Yeah, and it don't have to be anything crazy. There's just cleanup items, I think, that if we put them on a list, we can knock them out. I had a question from a citizen that lives over off of Powell Avenue, and he's kind of curious as to what the speed limit is from, I know we changed 54 to 45 miles per hour, but he had indicated, and I didn't double check, he'd indicated that from 54 to Main Street, or at least to the city limits around the fairgrounds, that he wasn't clear as if when you turn off at 54 going 45, is it 45 miles an hour there, is it 55 there, or is it 35 there? I guess it's not posted real well heading into town.
That's a county section of road, so I think it defaults to whatever the state statute is, which is probably 55, until you hit the city limits.
I think the concern was...
But it's not posted in any way. Yeah.
So it is 55, and I'll relay that back to them. So then it would go from 55 to, I guess...
drops down to 35 as you come into the city. Right.
And then drops to 25.
25 as you get up by Kent. Yeah.
Okay. I'll relay that on. Thank you.
Is there a city limit sign out there?
There is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So county, so I don't think they knew if that was city or county coming.
It's county, so I think it's essentially implied that if it's not posted, it's 55.
So they're safe. They just was hoping it wasn't 45 or 35 and somebody get them on it in traffic. So, that's all I got.
Okay. Moving to the other side of the Peanut Gallery. Anything from the law department? Anything else from the street department, Colin? Doug always has something. We count on you, Doug. We do.
This is one you're going to want to know something about. So the garage on Church Street that we've been working on for a while, we received 3 quotes on Monday, yesterday. They ranged in price, but our lowest one was about $3,400. So you will see that at your next council meeting as a Board of Control item, more than likely. So just wanted to share that. And the only other thing is that I had is the West Market Street Bridge will close next Monday, the 13th. It will be closed for 90 days, roughly. So we got information out a couple weeks ago about that, but the day is nearing for it to be closed. So that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Brigger.
Nothing really new to add. I know Bill's going to touch on a few things. A lot of activity around town. We just closed out the